Welcome to the Highland League Weekly Preview Show. I'm Jamie Durent and I'm joined by the infamous duo of Callum Law and Paul Third to mull over this weekend's games. We've got the cameras this weekend at Lossiemouth against Nairn and Fraserburgh against Inverurie Locos. What are your kind of thoughts and expectations for those two games?
I'm just delighted that Fraserburgh Locos won't go to penalties this time. After the longest night of my life, it felt like sitting watching the Cup quarter-final a couple of weeks ago. It was horrendous. It was a really tight game when the two played in the Cup a couple of weeks ago, and I'm expecting nothing different. I think the Locos team that'll go to Belsley will be set out in a very similar way, hard to break down, looking to catch Fraserburgh on the counter. It'll be a long afternoon, I think. I don't see a lot of goals in this one.
No, I would agree. I'd think it could be quite tight potentially. I think you'd have to sort of start with Fraserburgh as slight favourites, and I do think at the minute they've just got a wee bit more firepower at the top end of the park than Inverurie. Have got good players, Gary Wood, Robert Ward, Nathan Mears, etc. But there's maybe just a few more options for Mark Cowie in that final third, which in these tight games, sometimes boys coming off the bench or whatever can make a difference. In terms of the main game you were mentioning, Lossiemouth v Nairn, I think that's really intriguing because Lossiemouth they've done well. They've had a couple of decent home wins in the league against Wick and against Strathspey. So, you know, this is another game I'd imagine they would look at in terms of in the list and go that they've got a decent chance of getting the points. Nairn, on the flip side, haven't won yet this season. Ronnie Sharp's sort of been critical of the mistakes they've made in terms of losing goals, so can they, that's a question mark for me, can they cut some of them out? And if they can, it'll give them a good chance, because when you've got Scott Davidson, Connor Gethins, Liam Shewan, Andy Gregg, these sort of players, they will cause problems for Lossie, you would expect.
Nairn, you keep thinking, well, maybe this is going to be the weekend, this will be the game that it happens, but the Coasters won't be giving away any charity here. They'll be looking to bounce back themselves from their trip to Brecon. So I'm expecting, again, like the other game, a really close affair in this one.
I mean, say as far as Nairn are concerned, the longer you go without getting that first win on the board, I think the more the confidence starts to sap away and you start to wonder when those first 3 points are coming.
Well, it just becomes a pressure situation for it all involved.
Exactly, because I think the expectations, and I was probably as guilty as anyone, is building them up at the start of the season, but the expectations for Nairn this year were quite high, and I mean, you look at the start, the good draws with Banks of D and Rothes, and which, you know, you looked at that as favourable results, but since then they haven't really kicked on as you would expect. I mean, it's still early in the season, there's a long time to go, but, you know, as you're saying, the longer it sort of drags on, if you've had a poor start, it becomes more difficult to get out of that.
Elsewhere, Banks of D get the favourite probably away trip of the season, all the way up to Wick, and probably the acid test of their Highland League credentials. I mean, it's two sides that have had a decent start to the season.
Yeah, very much so. Wick at home haven't conceded a goal yet. They've won all their games, so I'm sure the scorers will be eager to continue that record. I mean, as you say, for Banks of D, it's another one of those games that they haven't faced before. It'll be interesting to see how they get on. They're still a wee bit light in terms of squad. A few players Jamie Watt would like to have available still not quite there, so that limits his options perhaps as well. And Jamie has sort of been critical at times, maybe critical's the wrong word, but disappointed at times with how the sort of performances have tailed off. Last week against Clach, he was really pleased with the first 45 minutes. They were 2-0 up, but second 45, the energy level seemed to go a bit, and they struggled, and they were put under a bit of pressure by Clach, and who could have probably come away with a point in the end with the pressure they had. So he'll probably be looking for a 90-minute performance, I suppose, more than maybe 45 or an hour.
As we've seen from Wick, and we keep saying they're very good at home, teams don't enjoy going up there. Conversely, Banks of D did not enjoy their last long trip north. They were well beaten by Brora Rangers up there. So yeah, Jamie Watt will be looking for a much better display from his side, and hopefully a result to go with it. But I kind of fancy Wick at home for this one, I have to say.
You mentioned Brora there. They're at home to Devonvale this weekend, and then another kind of title contender, Bucky Thistle. They've got Huntly at Victoria Park. I mean, is it difficult, do you think, maybe to see past the two home sides this weekend?
I wouldn't argue with that assessment.
No, it's. I mean, you can. I'll try playing devil's advocate. I'll make a case for the two away sides. I think Devonvale this season they have, when they've played the likes of Brechin, albeit that was at home, Fairmartin in the Aberdeenshire Cup as well at North Lodge, they've competed quite well without taking anything from the game. So I think Devonvale, if they play well, can definitely make it difficult for Brora, and they'll be hoping if they do that and they stay in the game, that can lead to them taking something. But by the same token, Brora having suffered their first league loss last weekend as well, you'd expect them to be looking to kind of put that right, so it could be difficult for the Bamfers at Victoria Park. I mean, Huntly, obviously, we mentioned Devonvale. Huntly beat them last weekend for their first league win, and you've got to try and look to build on that. Okay, it's difficult away to Bucky, and next week they're at home to Fraserburgh, so
that old fixture list again.
Just the run of games that you're wanting there, I'm sure, for the Black and Golds. But I've said this before with Huntly this season, there is goals on their side where Andy Hunter, Gavin Elphinstone started the season well, Robbie Foster, Brodie Allen, even Angus Grant's been on his way back, has come off the bench a few times. There is goals on Huntly's side, and if you can get yourselves in front, or cause Bucky problems, but get yourself in front, then you might take something from the game. Another important point I think for Huntly is that Michael Clark has come back. I mean, he's still maybe quite fully fit, but he came back last week, played for the first time since February, and they kept a clean sheet. Now, it's not simplistic to say it was all down to him, but he does make a big difference for Huntly defensively, so they'll be hoping he's on his game against Bucky as well, because with their forward options, they'll need to be strong defensively.
As a spoiler alert, I'm going to fancy Bucky at home for most games this season, I have to say. But the interesting thing from a Huntly point of view is, how are they going to react to getting that first win against the Vale at the weekend? Are they going to kick on now?
I mean, you've also got Clark, who are kind of probably in desperate kind of need of points quickly against a Rothes side who you'd think would be kind of buoyed after that kind of thumping win against Turriff last weekend.
This is a tough one, because everything says, well, Rothes are up and running now, and Clark might find it a tough afternoon, but then Clark are a funny team to me, because they seem to go a couple of games where you think,
they tell a lot of jokes, do they?
No, but what I mean is, you write them off at your peril. The one that you think, they might struggle this afternoon against this team, they're in form, and then Clark go and turn them over. So I haven't got a clue how this game is going to go, I'll be honest.
I think with Clark, if you speak to anybody at Clark really, but Jordan McDonald specifically, although they've only had one win in the league so far this season, there's been maybe not over a full 90 minutes, but there's been a lot of aspects that he's been happy with in terms of how they're playing and things, and I think everyone at Clark thinks it's only really a matter of time before they go on quite a good run in the league. And the thing you're sort of saying about you can never discount them, and with the players they've got on their side, James Anderson, Connor Bunce, Paul Brindle, these sort of guys, they're good match winners, the players that can come up with a bit of magic in the final third to win you games. So you can't, as you sort of said, you discount Clark at your peril. I think that could be a really good encounter actually at Grant Street.
We've got Keith against Fairmartin United at Carnock Park. I mean, Fairmartin United will probably be looking to build on the impressive win last weekend against Brora.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've spoken before about consistency for Fairmartin, and that's what they'll be looking for, following up a good result with another. But I mean, Keith themselves looking to do the same, follow up a good result, a good win that they had at Forest by trying to defeat Fairmartin as well. So they could, there's potential there. Keith could get something perhaps, but if Fairmartin are up to the levels against Brora, you would still have to fancy them, I would say.
I wrote off Keith to my peril a week ago. I'm not going to do it again. I think the Maroons can upset the apple cart again. I think it'll be there you go. I'm trying to make amends for writing them off a week ago by tipping them for a shot.
Such a turncoat, is he? No. It's interesting as well, this, because although everyone sort of knows everyone, the two managers, Craig Ewan and Stuart Anderson, are quite friendly, I believe, as well. So I wonder if it'll sort of be if there's been no sort of texts or anything this week. It's all quiet before preparing for the game on Saturday.
The old friendly rivalry line coming out there this week.
Until 3 o'clock.
We're all pals after 5 p.m. Bottom v top at Seafield Park as Strathspey take on Brechin, and you can imagine it's a pretty thankless task for the Jags at the minute trying to take on the unbeaten side.
Well, I tipped Strathspey last weekend and they came close before kind of blowing it in the last 10 minutes. I'd be amazed if they were to take something from Brechin. I mean, you look at Brechin and think, well, they're like Fraserburgh last year. They got their noses in front and they just kind of stayed there. And that's now the challenge, is to stay ahead of the chasing pack. I don't think Strathspey are going to be the team that's going to stop that charge at the top, not this weekend anyway.
You feel like, given the 4 or 5 teams that are going to be at the top challenging, even at this early stage, any point dropped is going to be a prisoner, just because of how consistent that these teams have been in the past.
Oh, it's so. I mean, last year was nip and tuck for a long time. I think it's going to be even tighter this year. More spread actually, because you're seeing teams taking points off each other. Brechin are the only one not to slip up so far. I think we've always said the head-to-heads are going to be so key. Brechin are looking good in that front so far, but yeah, we're early days. We're only coming into September. The
reason the head-to-heads become important is if you win games like this. You know, if you're looking at it from a Brechin perspective, in a way, it sounds maybe funny to say, but in a way, if they were to draw at Strathspey on Saturday, that's probably a poorer result than say drawing at Fraserburgh or something. If you know what I mean, like in terms of, because that's points they wouldn't really expect to drop, whereas in so the head-to-heads between the sort of top 3, 4 or 5, it's that tight where you kind of go, it's a toss of a coin a lot of the time.
As the last game to have a wee chat about, it's Turf v Forest. It seems to be a pretty close one to call.
Two sides looking for a
pick-me-up.
Me-up after kind of surprising results last weekend. I mean, Turf, maybe not surprising that they lost at Rothes, but the manner of it. So they'll be back at home looking to respond, and I think they can, to be fair, Turf. And I mean, they've always. I mean, I feel like a broken record a wee bit talking about players at the top end of the pitch and match winners, but when you've got Ewan Clark and Aaron Reid, who've both started the season well, you've always got that chance of scoring goals. Forest likewise have good players at the top end of the pitch. I think for Forest, Stephen McDonald sort of mentioned that they seem to struggle when they go behind. They seem to lose their way a bit, which when you've got a reasonably young side as they have, that can happen. But I suppose that's something he'll be looking for an improvement, is if you do go behind, you can't just sort of fall out of the game completely.
The mechanics need to check out the engine because it stalled badly at the weekend. That's what I would say. I think they just need to get going again.
You've been building up all show.
I was going to say, how long have you had that one stood up for?
Ryan's on holiday. Someone needs to do the bad point.
You guarantee Ryan's left you a note of that. That'll be it. But anyway.
Well, that's it for this week's Highland League Weekly preview show. Keep an eye on the website over the weekend for all the roundup of the weekend's action. And then on Monday, we'll be back with our usual highlights package with the cameras at Lossiemouth against Nairn and Fraserburgh against Inverurie Locals. Enjoy the football wherever you are this weekend.